The spotlight hit 6-year-old Michael Jackson's face, and his mind went completely blank. 250 people stared at him from the darkness. His brothers were behind him waiting for him to start singing. The music was playing, but Michael couldn't remember a single word. His hands started shaking. His throat closed up. His legs felt like they might give out underneath him. This was supposed to be the Jackson 5's breakthrough moment, the biggest audience they'd ever performed for, the talent show that could change everything, and Michael was about to ruin it. From the side of the stage, Katherine Jackson saw her baby freezing. She saw the panic in his eyes. She saw him starting to cry. What she did in the next 10 seconds would determine whether Michael Jackson ever performed again or whether the world would lose the greatest entertainer it would ever know. But before we dive into this incredible moment that saved Michael Jackson's career, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, what you're about to witness will show you that sometimes the smallest act of love can change the entire course of history. This isn't just about stage fright. This is about the moment that created a legend. June 15, 1965. Lincoln Community Center, East Chicago, Indiana. The annual Spring Talent Showcase was the biggest event in East Chicago's music scene. Every year, local promoters and talent scouts showed up looking for the next big thing. Winners got a cash prize and, more importantly, the chance to perform at paying gigs around the city. For the Jackson family, this was everything. Joe Jackson had been pushing his sons relentlessly for 6 months preparing for this night. The Jackson 5, Tony at 14, Marcus at 11, Jerome at 10, Martin at 8, and Michael at just 6 years old, had been practicing in their garage until the neighbors threatened to call the police. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy. The Jackson family lived in a cramped 2-bedroom house on Lincoln Street, where privacy was a luxury none of them could afford. Joe worked double shifts at the steel mill, his hands permanently stained with grease and his back aching from years of manual labor. Catherine cleaned houses for wealthy families across town, often bringing home stories of the comfortable lives other people lived. But Joe had a vision that went beyond the steel mills and cleaning jobs. He saw something in his boys, raw talent that could lift the entire family out of poverty. Every evening after work, he'd gather them in the garage for practice sessions that lasted hours. The neighbors complained about the noise, but Joe didn't care. This was their ticket out. The garage rehearsals were intense. Joe demanded perfection, stopping songs mid-note if someone hit a wrong harmony or missed a dance step. Again, he'd say, his voice cutting through the humid Indiana air. From the top. And this time, do it right. Michael, being the youngest, often bore the brunt of Joe's frustration. His small hands would shake as he held the microphone, knowing that every note he sang was being scrutinized. But there was no denying his gift. Even at 6 years old, Michael's voice carried an emotional weight that seemed impossible for someone so young. Joe's plan was simple: blow everyone away, win the competition, and use it as a launching pad to bigger opportunities. He'd already been talking to people, making connections. This performance could open doors, but the plan had one weak link. Michael. 6-year-old Michael was the most talented of all the brothers. Everyone who heard him sing agreed on that. His voice had a quality that was almost supernatural for a child his age. Pure, powerful, emotional in ways that didn't make sense coming from someone who still slept with a teddy bear. But Michael had a problem. He was terrified of performing. It started small. Before their backyard shows, Michael would get quiet. His stomach would hurt. He'd ask Catherine if he could sit this one out. The irony wasn't lost on Catherine. Here was a child with the voice of an angel, gifted beyond anything she'd ever witnessed, and he was paralyzed by the very thing he was born to do. She'd watch him during garage rehearsals, seeing how his small body would tense up whenever Joe called for a solo run-through. The night terrors had started about 2 months before the Lincoln Talent Show. Michael would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, crying about forgetting words or people booing him off stage. Catherine would rush to his bedside, finding him shaking and inconsolable. "Mama, what if I mess up?" he'd whisper into her shoulder. "What if I let everyone down?" "You won't, baby," she'd whisper back, stroking his hair. "God gave you this gift. He wouldn't give you something you couldn't handle." But privately, Catherine was growing concerned. She'd never seen stage fright this severe in someone so young. Most children his age would be excited about performing, not having anxiety attacks about it. She'd tried everything she could think of: warm milk before bed, calming prayers, even asking their neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who used to be a music teacher, for advice. But nothing seemed to help. "You're just nervous, baby," Catherine would say during his worst moments. "That's normal." But it wasn't just nerves. It was deeper than that. Michael would have nightmares about forgetting words, about people laughing at him, about letting his family down. He'd wake up crying, and Catherine would hold him until he fell back asleep. She'd tried talking to Joe about it, but Joe didn't want to hear it. "He's got to toughen up," Joe said. "Real performers don't get scared. They get on stage and do their job." "He's 6 years old," Catherine reminded him, "and he's got the voice of an angel. We can't waste that because he's got stage fright. He'll get over it." But Michael hadn't gotten over it. If anything, it was getting worse. The day of the Lincoln Talent Show, Michael threw up twice. Once in the morning before school, once in the afternoon when they got home. His small body was trembling as Catherine found him sitting on the bathroom floor, his face pale and streaked with tears. This wasn't the first time Michael's anxiety had manifested physically. Over the past few weeks leading up to the show, he'd barely been eating. Catherine had to force him to finish even half his dinner, watching helplessly as her youngest son grew thinner and more withdrawn. "I can't do it, Mama," he said, his eyes red from crying. "Please don't make me. I'll mess up and embarrass everyone. Daddy will be so mad." Catherine's heart broke. She looked at her youngest son, so small, so scared, and she wanted to tell Joe that Michael needed more time, that 6 years old was too young for this kind of pressure. The weight of the family's hopes shouldn't rest on such tiny shoulders. But she also knew what this opportunity meant to the family. They needed the exposure. They needed the prize money. The $50 could pay for groceries for 2 weeks. And they needed to prove that the Jackson 5 was something special, something that could change their circumstances forever. The talent show entry fee alone had been a sacrifice. $25 that Joe had saved by working overtime shifts, and Catherine had contributed by taking on extra house cleaning jobs. Every penny counted in the Jackson household, and this investment represented a huge gamble on their children's future. "Listen to me, Michael," Catherine said, kneeling down to look him in the eyes. She could see her own reflection in his wide, frightened gaze. "I'm going to be right there, not in the audience. Right on the side of the stage where you can see me. If you get scared, you look at me. Just me. Nobody else matters, okay?" Michael nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. "And you know what else?" Catherine pulled something from around her neck. It was a small silver cross necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. "You're going to wear this, and if you need to, you touch it and remember that God and Mom are with you always." Michael took the necklace and clutched it like a lifeline. The Lincoln Community Center auditorium was packed. Every seat filled, people standing in the back. The energy was electric with anticipation, but for the Jackson family, the atmosphere felt heavy with pressure and expectation. Catherine had spent the afternoon helping Michael get ready. She'd pressed his white shirt until every wrinkle was gone, polished his shoes until they gleamed, and carefully combed his hair. But no amount of preparation could calm the storm of anxiety brewing in her youngest son's eyes. The other families backstage seemed so confident, so prepared. Catherine noticed how some of the older performers had professional-looking costumes and instruments, making the Jackson boys' simple white shirts and black pants seem inadequate by comparison. She pushed down her own insecurities, knowing that Michael needed her to be strong. Joe paced backstage like a caged animal, his jaw set in determination. This was make-or-break time, and everyone could feel it. The family's financial situation had grown more precarious in recent months, with rumors of layoffs at the steel mill and Catherine's cleaning jobs barely covering the basics. This talent show wasn't just about dreams anymore. It was about survival. Backstage, the Jackson 5 waited in the wings. They were the seventh act of the night, performing right after intermission. Joe had requested that spot specifically, late enough that people were warmed up, but not so late they were tired. He'd studied every angle, determined not to leave anything to chance. The waiting was the hardest part. Michael sat on a folding chair, his legs too short to reach the floor, swinging nervously as he listened to the muffled applause from the auditorium. Each act that performed successfully only increased the pressure he felt. Michael stood between his brothers, his hand touching the silver cross at his throat. He could feel his heart pounding so hard it hurt. "You okay, little man?" Marcus asked, noticing how pale Michael looked. Michael nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Just remember," Tony said, "if you mess up, we've got your back. We'll cover for you." That should have been reassuring, but it just made Michael more anxious. What if he messed up so badly his brothers couldn't cover for him? What if he ruined everything? The act before them finished to solid applause. Then the MC's voice boomed through the auditorium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, all the way from Lincoln Street, the Jackson 5. This was it. Tony led the way onto the stage, followed by Marcus, Jerome, and Martin. Michael was last, his legs feeling like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. The applause was welcoming, but not overwhelming. The audience was curious, but not yet convinced. A group of kids performing. They'd seen that before. The boys took their positions. Michael was front and center. The spotlight operator found him immediately, and suddenly Michael was bathed in blinding white light. He couldn't see the audience anymore. Just the light, just the darkness beyond it. And somewhere in that darkness, 250 strangers waiting for him to prove he deserved to be on this stage. The music started, a backing track Joe had recorded. The opening notes of "Stand By Me" filled the auditorium. This was Michael's song, his solo, his moment to show everyone why the Jackson 5 was special. The introduction played. 4 bars, 8 bars. Michael was supposed to start singing, but he couldn't remember the words. His mind was completely blank. The lyrics he'd sung 1,000 times in practice had vanished from his memory like they'd never existed. Panic hit him like a physical force. His hands started shaking. His vision got blurry with tears. Behind him, he heard Jerome whisper urgently, "Michael, come on, sing." But he couldn't. His throat had closed up. The music kept playing, and the silence where his voice should have been was deafening. In the audience, Joe Jackson's face went dark. Catherine saw it and felt her stomach drop. People started shifting in their seats. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The brothers exchanged panicked looks. Michael felt hot tears start to roll down his cheeks. He'd ruined everything. His father would never forgive him. His brothers would hate him. Everyone would know he wasn't good enough. He wanted to run, to disappear, to be anywhere but on this stage. And then he saw her, Catherine Jackson, standing in the wing stage right, exactly where she'd promised she'd be. She wasn't looking disappointed. She wasn't angry. She was smiling, a warm, loving, completely confident smile. And then Catherine did something that everyone backstage would remember for the rest of their lives. She started to dance. Not big movements, not trying to steal attention, just gentle swaying, moving to the music like it was the most natural thing in the world. And as she danced, she mouthed the words to Michael, "When the night has come and the land is dark." Michael watched his mother, her calm face, her gentle movements, her absolute certainty that he could do this. And something shifted inside him. The panic didn't disappear, but it got smaller, quieter. His mother's presence made the spotlight feel less blinding, the audience less terrifying. Michael took a shaky breath, and he started to sing. His voice was soft at first, uncertain, but it was there. "When the night has come and the land is dark." Catherine kept dancing, kept mouthing the words, her eyes never leaving her son. "And the moon is the only light we'll see." Michael's voice got stronger. The words were coming back. He could remember them now. He glanced at his mother again, and she nodded encouragingly. "You're doing it, baby. You're doing it." By the time Michael hit the chorus, something miraculous was happening. He forgot about the audience. He forgot about the pressure. He forgot about everything except the song and his mother dancing in the wings. And when you stop being afraid, something magical happens. You start to perform. Michael's voice opened up. That supernatural quality that everyone talked about came flooding out. He wasn't just singing the words anymore. He was feeling them, living them. His body started to move, nothing choreographed, just natural response to the music. The audience, which had been confused and restless 30 seconds ago, went completely still. They were witnessing something special. Behind Michael, his brothers found their harmonies. The panic was over. They were performing now, really performing, and it was working. But everyone's eyes were on the 6-year-old in the spotlight. So, darling, darling, stand by me. Michael hit the final chorus, and his voice soared. He threw everything he had into it, his small body projecting sound that seemed impossible for his size. The last note hung in the air. For a moment, there was silence. Then the auditorium exploded. 250 people leapt to their feet. The applause was thunderous. People were shouting, whistling. The judges were nodding to each other, smiling. Michael stood there, stunned. Had that really just happened? Had he done it? He looked to the wings where his mother stood. Catherine was crying, happy tears streaming down her face. She was clapping and nodding, her smile so bright it could have lit up the whole stage. Michael ran off the stage as soon as the curtain closed, straight into his mother's arms. I forgot, Mama, he sobbed. I forgot all the words. I know, baby. I know. Catherine held him tight. But you remembered when it mattered most. You remembered. I was so scared. I know, but you sang anyway. That's what brave is, Michael. Brave isn't not being scared. Brave is being terrified and doing it anyway. Joe Jackson appeared backstage, pushing through the crowd. Michael tensed, expecting anger. But Joe's face was complicated, pride mixed with something else. Maybe respect. That was good, boy, Joe said gruffly. Real good. Then he walked away to talk to a promoter who'd been impressed by the performance. Catherine held Michael for a long moment. Mama, Michael said quietly. Yes, baby? I want to do it again. Catherine pulled back to look at him. What? I want to perform again. It was scary at first, but then it felt good. Really good. Like I was supposed to be up there. Catherine's eyes filled with fresh tears because she understood what had just happened. Michael hadn't just overcome his fear. He'd discovered something about himself. He'd found where he belonged. The Jackson 5 won the talent show that night. First place, unanimous decision from the judges. More importantly, 3 different promoters approached Joe afterward about booking the group. Within a month, the Jackson 5 was performing at paying gigs all over Indiana, and Michael never forgot his words again. But the transformation went deeper than just remembering lyrics. The Jackson family dynamic began to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. Joe, who had always been the stern taskmaster, started to show glimpses of pride that went beyond mere achievement. He began to understand that Michael's sensitivity wasn't a weakness to be overcome, but an integral part of what made his voice so powerful. Catherine noticed the change in Michael almost immediately. The boy who had once hidden in his room before performances now asked when their next show would be. He started practicing not because he was forced to, but because he genuinely loved the feeling of connecting with an audience. The Silver Cross necklace became more than just a comfort object. It became a symbol of the unbreakable bond between mother and son. During their subsequent performances, Catherine would still stand in the wings, and Michael would still glance her way for reassurance. But now it was less about fear and more about sharing their joy in the moment. The success at Lincoln Community Center opened doors the family had never imagined. Within weeks, they were invited to perform at the annual East Chicago Summer Festival, this time as a featured act rather than competitors. The fee was modest, $75, but it represented validation that they were truly professionals now. More importantly, word of the Jackson 5 began to spread throughout the Midwest music scene. Other promoters started calling Joe, and Catherine found herself managing a calendar full of bookings. The garage that had once been a place of tension and fear became a space of creative energy and family unity. But more than that, something fundamental had changed in him that night. The terrified 6-year-old who threw up before shows was gone. In his place was a performer who understood that the stage wasn't something to fear. It was home. Years later, during an interview with Oprah, Michael was asked about when he first knew he wanted to be a performer. I was 6 years old, as Michael said. My first big talent show. I froze on stage, completely blanked. I thought my life was over. What happened? Oprah asked. My mother saved me. She stood in the wings and danced for me. Just for me. And she taught me the most important lesson I ever learned about performing. What was that? Michael smiled. that you're never alone up there. Even when it feels like the whole world is watching and judging you, the people who love you are right there with you. You just have to look for them. Is that why you always looked the stage right when you performed? Michael nodded. Always. Even when she wasn't physically there, I could feel her. That night at Lincoln Community Center, my mother gave me something more valuable than talent or training. She gave me courage. And she showed me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is keep going when everything inside you wants to quit. Katherine Jackson was in the audience that day. Oprah's cameras caught her wiping away tears. After the interview, Michael walked over and hugged his mother. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered, "for that night, for all the nights." "That's what mothers do, baby," Katherine said. "We stand in the wings and dance until you find your voice." The silver cross necklace with Katherine's grandmother's blessing never left Michael's possession. He wore it during his first Motown audition, tucked it under his shirt at the Grammys, kept it close backstage at Madison Square Garden. Everywhere, a reminder that the greatest gift a performer can have isn't talent or ambition. It's knowing that someone believes in you when you don't believe in yourself. June 15th, 1965 lasted only a few minutes. But those minutes taught 6-year-old Michael Jackson that fear doesn't have to stop you, that forgetting doesn't mean failing, and that sometimes the person dancing in the wings is more important than everyone sitting in the audience. Katherine Jackson didn't just save a performance that night, she saved a career. She saved a legend. And she proved that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is a mother's love, expressed through a simple dance in the darkness while her child finds his light.